Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Srimatre Namaha. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome everyone to the 6th session of Decrypting You. And boy, what a fantastic journey it has been till now, decoding the namas through various layers and seeing them from various angles, which then takes us through the journey of deep love and self-discovery. As Amma mentioned, that contemplating on the namas is a meditative journey. To be able to experience the weaving of the meanings and symbols that we are learning here in our meditation is truly phenomenal. While going through the last class, I was thinking of Devi's eyes. It felt like I was entering into this portal, this space, the universal mind, infinite, always full, holds all kinds of dualities. It's auspicious. And it felt like the star bodies were shimmering as it was explained in the class, receiving light from Devi's nose stud. And when I zoom out, these are the same eyes that are always resting on me. The gaze birthing me, giving me expression and giving me my meaning. So grateful for these explanations. And it would be wonderful to hear your contemplations, your reflections at the end of the class or on our social platforms. And I'll share different ways you can engage in discussion in the chat soon. Some of you have emailed us, giving us your feedback, appreciation regarding the lesson. So thank you very much. And kindly remember, our next session will be on 10th September, 11 a.m. EST. So with that, I now welcome our very beloved Kavitha Amma.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Srimatre Namaha. It's wonderful to see you all on this continued exploration of the Lalitā Sahasranāma. I would, again, like Tanu said, thank you, Tanu. I would love to invite you to share your own contemplations of these namas so we can all learn from each other. Okay. So last time, do you remember we started talking about Devi's face, right? Vaktra Lakshmi Paribhava Chalan Meena Bhalochana. So we said Devi's eyes are like this, the fish, right, in a calm pool. And I was reflecting on this a lot more after our session and thinking, what is it? Why is there such an emphasis on the eyes? And one of the things that you all know is that the eyes are said to be the windows to the soul, right? And when you say windows to the soul, what about the soul are we talking about? So we're talking about Ichha Shakti, will. So you know of people, right, who have beautiful eyes. And when you say, when you look at somebody and you say, well, you have beautiful eyes, what are we actually referring to? We're referring to the expression that comes through the eyes, right? You know people who are very expressive in their eyes. You look at them and you can tell, that their expressions are changing, that they mean something with their eyes. There are people, you know of, the yogis and sadhus and the yoginis who don't really speak a whole lot. Like, for instance, Ramana Maharshi didn't really need to speak a whole lot. His eyes said it all, right? He would look at you and you would be transformed. And we don't have to go all the way to, of course, one of the greatest sages of our time. You probably know that if you have children, for instance, because children never tell lies, right? They always tell us the truth. So if you have children there, you've probably heard them say, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Like, you have something to say, Mom. What is that? Have you heard your kids say that to you? Because your eyes are speaking, right? Your intention is coming out through your eyes. Your will, or whatever your deepest thing is at the moment, it's coming out. Now, Devi's will is what? This entire Jagat. All of creation is Devi's will, right? So can you imagine the intensity of her gaze, of all the different expressions that need to come out through her eyes? They necessarily have to be like fish in a pond, right? They're continuously changing, expanding, contracting, creating stars, creating black holes, creating, the minor kinds of upheavals that are going on in our minds right now. The movement of thought and the movement of understanding, the movement of recognition, or the movement of confusion even that happens to us in our minds right now. Everything is happening as a result of Devi's will. So her eyes are continuously moving. Isn't that beautiful? What an exquisite way of describing this highest truth of Ichha Shakti, right? Ichha Shakti that is manifest in the world through Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. Okay, so just one more thing for you to chew on about Devi's eyes. So now we move on to the next verse here. And so last time we stopped at, where did we stop? Tatanga Yugali Puta, Tapanodupa Mandala. Yeah, that's where we stopped last time. Okay. So now we move on to the next verse. Does anyone have anything else to share about that particular verse? Anyone?
Shri Matre Nama, Kavitha ji. My name is Swati. I was actually thinking about when I was thinking about Devi's eyes, I was actually thinking about the Jagannath, and I saw that is the eye of the universe. And I imagined myself going inside the eyes when I will leave my body. And those were the eyes from which I actually came. And that's how I imagined. And that made me feel that we all are, that's how we have come from Devi's eyes. And we are just floating in his ocean, her ocean itself. And it's just going on and on and on until she takes us back.
Yes. And even after she takes us back, right? Because it never ends, right? Even that process of absorption is also her eye movement, so to speak.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. Okay. So next we move on to this verse. Padma Raga Shiladarsha Paribhavi Kapola Bhuhu Nava Vidruma Bimbashri Nyakkari Radanachada. Okay. Padma Raga. Okay. Padma Raga means a type of ruby. Okay. Padma Raga Shila. Shila means the gemstone, the ruby. Adarsha means to be seen. It's like a reflection in the mirror. Paribhavi. Paribhavi means to tease or to ridicule. Kapola means cheeks. Bhu is high. So we're now talking about Devi's cheeks. Okay. Padma Raga Shiladarsha Paribhavi Kapola Bhuhu. She has high cheekbones. That's something that we all desire, right? So she has the perfect face, remember? So she has the perfect high cheekbones. And they're not ordinary. Of course, nothing about Devi is ordinary. So it says her cheeks ridicule the radiance of rubies. Right? So rubies, they're beautiful, they're shiny, and they're red. And many of us require that a little bit of makeup to, come close to that kind of, the radiance of the cheeks. But Devi's cheeks are naturally so splendorous and brilliant and beautiful that they ridicule the perfect radiance of rubies. Okay, now the color red is associated with Lalitā Devi, and this is something we discussed even before. Now, red has to do with the arising and the flowering of this desire in us. Not that we don't have this desire, we do. Right? Whatever desire we have for anything in our lives is of the color of red. It's the color of this ruby, okay? Red ruby. Red because it is also the color of passion. Now, one of the important concepts in this tradition is that of Kundalini. Now, what is Kundalini? It's a very complex topic, and I won't go into all of the nuances of Kundalini. But what we can say is that Kundalini is the potential for turning inward, the potential for understanding, the potential to want something more than just living and dying as we ordinarily do. Okay, it's a potential, and we all have it. We all have this potential of wanting to know something beyond what is given to us, what is obvious. Now, what is obvious to us? We are born, we struggle through life. You have to get an education, you have to get a job, you have to get, if you are in that particular culture, you follow that culture's norms, which is either to get married or not get married. Please mute yourselves, people. To get married, to have a family, to have children or not, whatever the culture demands of us or asks of us. That becomes the well in which we live, we grow up, and we age, and then we die. Whatever that culture, whatever that societal norm is, that's what we do. So a lot of people in the West, for instance, they are living their life in this very regulated way of, I have to get a job, I have to pay my taxes, I have to take care of my kids, I have to take care of my family, and then I'm going to retire. And after I retire, there is finally going to be some peace for me. And after I retire, I'm going to do this, or the other. And then, of course, then my kids will have kids, and then I'll take care of, them. And it's like a regulated thing. I'm going to have this, and this. And if you're in the US, you're trying to aspire for the American dream or not, whatever, even within the US, you may have, your own ideologies that you're trying to fit into. Or if you're in some other country, you're trying to live up to those ideologies. But through all this, regardless of where you're living, regardless of what is happening, we all have this potential that, wait, there is something more to life than this, that is created as a structure by society and by culture for me to live by. And what is that? What is that I am seeking? Behind all this, what is this thing that I really, really want to know? Because even after I have accomplished all this, am I going to be fulfilled at my last breath? When I'm on my deathbed and when I am about to die, is this going to be enough for me? This is a question that all of us have, pretty much. And yet, it is kind of buried deep within. Right? It is buried deep within and not really explored, because the nuances of our day-to-day lives, they take over our lives. The getting up in the morning, doing this, coming back home, going to sleep, that takes over our life. And if you observe for a moment right now, just reflect on this. Can you think about the last 5 years of your life? Can you think about the last 10 years of your life? Or the last 20 years? Where have they gone? Where did they go? Can you look through those events of the last 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years and say, well, I can pick out these moments, of course, that were, kind of spikes or valleys or troughs, some really good, good times and some really bad times. But in between, it was all lived like a dream. It's like when you're driving from point A to point B, you arrive at point B and you don't know, you have no awareness of this drive from A to B. Has that happened to you? You get in the car, you start driving, you arrive somewhere, and you simply don't remember how you got there. You were so absorbed in your dream, right? And so what this tradition tells us is that there is this great potential, that this great energy that is there for this self-discovery. And yet it remains as a potential, with very little of it being expended for all of this dream state that we live in. And even that, the little bit of energy that is required for the dream state, it comes from desire. And then for some of us, this desire becomes really intense. It takes over your life. It takes over our lives. And I know that this has happened to many of you. It has definitely happened to me, where it's like, no, this life that I'm living there is something more to this. What is that? I want to know that. And that wanting to know is that desire, that movement of desire, which is red in color. It is red in color. And why is it red in color? Because it is fiery. It is this redness that you see of Devi is not really, like flames, right? It's not flames like fiery, like the sun. It's this kind of a mix between the sun and the moon. It's fiery, but it's also very juicy. You wanting to know, like all of you are here, like on a Sunday morning. You have other better things to do, I suppose, but you're here. Isn't that juicy? You're like, I want to know. I want to know what this means. This love that we think we have for Devi is actually a love for ourselves, for this highest in us. When we say, I want to know Devi, actually we're saying, I want to know myself. Because on some level, we know that I am her. I want to know myself. That wanting is of the quality of the sun that is mixed with the moon. And that's why it's always the rising sun. It's not the hot sun in the middle of the day, right? It's the rising sun. Just like her cheeks. And when this happens, where, when you are effused with this energy of wanting to know yourself, you become flushed with this redness, this energy. So when you look at yourself in the mirror, your cheeks will be glowing too. Doesn't matter if you have the high, perfect cheekbones. But you look at yourself and you don't recognize yourself because you are glowing with that juice, that fire of wanting, of longing. And this longing can come out as a longing in your relationships, as a longing in wanting something, in your creative life, in creating something, in wanting to relate to the world in a particular way. All of these are all manifestations of the same desire. But when that desire turns upon itself and it wants to know itself, then it's an unmistakable glow. Because now it has turned on its head. Is this making sense? The desire turning upon itself is what gives you that flush in your cheeks. Because now you want to know yourself. All your life you have been wanting to know yourself through the world. Now you want to know yourself through yourself. It's a big difference. Okay? Padma Raga Shiladasha Paribhavi Kapola Bhuhu. Then it says, Nava Vidruma Bimbashri Nyakkari Radanachada. Nava means fresh. Vidruma. Vidruma means coral. So now we have talked about rubies. Now we'll talk about corals. Bimba. Bimba also means reflection, but bimba also means a particular type of medicinal fruit. Shri means luster, radiance, auspiciousness. Nyakkari. Nyakkara again means to humiliate or ridicule. Radanachada. Radanachada means lips or anything that covers the teeth. So, Nava Vidruma Bimbashri Nyakkari Radanachada, whose lips reflect auspiciousness. This auspiciousness that degrades even the luster of fresh coral. Okay, freshly cut coral. Now, I don't know how many of us have seen freshly cut coral, but you can imagine coral is, when coral is not freshly cut, for instance, my necklace is coral. And you can see it becomes a little orangey. But when it's freshly cut, it's reddish. So think of the rising sun. Think of the ruby. That's what the freshly cut coral would look like. So now we're talking about Devi's lips. And her lips are of the color of coral, freshly cut coral, but not really, because they humiliate even freshly cut coral. They are more beautiful than that, right? So they ridicule freshly cut coral. So again, we're talking about lips, Devi's lips. Now, when we talk about the face of Devi, I'm going to give you a beautiful meditation, okay, which is memorize these verses. And when you are looking at yourself in the mirror, recite those verses. Look at your eyes. Look at your nose. Look at your cheeks. Look at your lips. And see Devi's dance in each of the features of your face. And see that Padmaraga within yourself, because it's there, right? It's there as her own reflection. So that's a beautiful meditation to do. See, anyway, we're all obsessed with ourselves, right? We're all so vain. You can never pass a mirror without looking at it, right? So why not just turn it into a meditation? Why not, this is the path of Tantra, right? The path of Tantra is whatever is the path of your fall should be the path of your rise as well. So if you're vain, no problem, use your vanity to rise above. That desire for vanity, turn that into desire for self-knowledge. How about that? Easy peasy, right? So, Padmaraga, Shiladarsha, Paribhavi Kapola Bhuhu, Nava Vidruma Bimbashri, Nyakkari Radanachada. Then we come to the next verse. It's really, really beautiful because now we're going to talk about Devi's teeth and her breath. Shuddha Vidyankurakara Dvijapankti Dvayojvala Karpura Viti Kamoda Samakarsha Digantara. Okay. So, Shuddha Vidya. Shuddha means pure. Vidya is knowledge. Shuddha Vidyankura. Ankura means to sprout. Akara, to appear. Dvija Pankti Dvayojvala. So, Dvija means teeth. Pankti is a row or arrangement. Dvayojvala. Dvaya means couple, and Ujjvala is to shine or to illuminate. So this verse basically is describing Devi's teeth as she whose radiant teeth appear like two divergent buds of knowledge, pure knowledge, Shuddha Vidya. So this verse, actually this line, has the highest knowledge encoded in it. Shuddha Vidya, pure knowledge, which is the goal of this path. Shuddha Vidya means it is not corrupted by anything. It is knowledge as it is. This is the goal of sadhana, Shuddha Vidya. And this is represented by Devi's two rows of teeth. But they are divergent. So what happens in Shuddha Vidya? Now, Shuddha Vidya, to understand this, we have to understand the 4 levels of speech. Okay? There are 4 levels of speech. Beginning with para. Paravak is the highest form or the highest truth. There is no difference between Paravak and the Supreme Brahman or the Supreme Shiva Shakti in its ultimate form. Para is that, the ultimate. That Paravak or the supreme expression is when there is no differentiation between the observed and the observer, the subject and the object. They are the same. So at that level of vidya, when a yogin or a yogini attains that Shuddha Vidya, they look at the world and they see themselves. There is no differentiation between me and the other. There is no difference. There is no boundary between me and the other. The world is me, and I am the world. That is at the level of para. Pashyanti is one step below, where there is a subject and there is a reflective object, which means at that level, one step below the absolute, there is still a sense of a boundary, as in, there is me, this world is also me, But this world is a world that is not me. This world is me, yes. I'm looking at the world and I see that it's a reflection of me. I'm not seeing a continuity yet between them. Okay, there is still a subtle barrier between them. In other words, at para, there was a complete merger of the subject and the object. It was like sugar that melts in milk. Okay, or you add water to milk and water and milk become one. So at pashyanti means after. So para, if the para is the highest or the most basic form of, or the highest form of the word, when it starts to express itself in the world, the first thing that happens is a split between the subject and the object. And that's called reflective word or pashyanti. This pashyanti then devolves again into madhyama. At madhyama level, these two, the subject and the object, become a little more defined. At vaikari, which is the fourth level, they are completely separate. Okay, completely separate. So what does this mean for us? So whatever is coming out of our speech, whatever is being expressed through us in speech is at the level of vaikari. Whatever we are still thinking, now whatever you're thinking and you're aware of that thought, that is also at the level of vaikari. Because there is a clear, you are observing your thought, right? That is also at the level of vaikari. Now, before that thought appears, there is something cooking in your mind, right? There is some little thing that's cooking in your mind. It has not yet become fully formed into words yet. That is madhyama. Even more subtle than that is pashyanti, which we can't even be aware of. We're not even aware of this, except in high states of meditation, where when you are practicing with a mantra, when you're meditating with a mantra, for instance, you start with vaikari, you're sounding it, and then it becomes a mental japa, mental repetition, where you're thinking it and you're thinking it. And at some point, you lose it. Has that happened to you? When you are meditating, the mantra just goes, you are also gone, mantra is also gone. And then you come back, you're like, wait, where was I? Where you were was in pashyanti, where that mantra disappeared into its source, which is at the level of energy or vibration, the subtlest. But even there, even at the level of vibration, which we can become aware of, it's still only at pashyanti. When that becomes fully absorbed into para, then that is at the highest state. So here we are saying, we're comparing Devi's teeth as the buds of Vidya that split into two, into the subject and the object, into her 2 rows of teeth. Now, we all have or should have 32 teeth, right? So 32 is also important in this meter, Anushtup. In Anushtup Chanda, which is the meter of the Lalitā Sahasranāma, there are 32 syllables. So that is also something that we can think of here. And so it's 16 and 16, right? 16 and 16. What does this tell you? Remind you of something? The moon phases, right? They both lead to Shuddha Vidya. In the waxing moon phase, the waning moon phase, and of course the 16th always being stable, constant, which is Devi herself. So this really has a lot of connotations here. 16 is also the number of syllables in the mantra, the Shodashi mantra. So all of these things have a lot of esoteric kinds of significant nuances in this verse. So Shuddha Vidyankurakara Dvija Pankti Dvayojvala. Karpura Vitika Moda Samakarsha Digantara. Karpura means camphor. Vitika means something that's wrapped in, like pan. Pan? Pan is betel leaf with, all these delicious camphor and all betel nut and all kinds of herbs and things that are kind of wrapped in a leaf, and then you chew on this after a meal. It's a very good digestive. Okay, Karpura Vitika Moda, and it has a very nice fragrance because of the camphor. So Vitika means the tied in the nuts and so on with the betel leaves. Amoda means fragrance, but Amoda also means pleasure and joy. Samakarsha means it has a very interesting meaning, actually, two opposing meanings. One is to spread far and wide, and the other is to draw in. Samakarsha. Dik antara. Dik means the directions. Antara means within. So this is, again, a very esoteric verse. So ordinarily, you would think that it means Devi is the one who chews the betel leaves that are filled with all these, or aromatic spices and so on, and which is very pleasant, which has a beautiful fragrance that, kind of dissipates from her. So she's always smelling of this camphor. Her breath always smells of this. But it's more esoteric than that, right? Because it's before I go into that, I want to tell you, it's we do this thing called a 64 Upachara Puja for Devi. Some of you may know this. In the Sri Chakra Puja, we do 64 upacharas. The 5 upachara, pancha upachara, the Shodasha upachara, the 16 upachara. Upachara means the offerings. And then there are 64 offerings that you can do for Devi. And even in the 16 offerings, after you give her food, right, Naivedyam, the next thing that you give is Tambulam. Tambula means this betel leaf, along with the betel nut and the camphor, and you offer that to Devi. But in the 64 Upachara Puja, it's very beautiful because you give this betel nut to her, and then thereafter, one of the Upacharas is you give her a mirror. And it always makes me cry in this Upachara because it says she looks in the mirror. Now, remember, she's chewing on the betel nut, and she looks in the mirror and she sees herself. She's seeing the world, but she's seeing herself as the world, which is a beautiful, beautiful upachara. So betel leaves and camphor. So samakarsha means the fragrance of Devi's betel leaves and her tambulam is spreading far and wide, but it's drawing everybody to her. Dik antara, from all directions, to within her. The entire creation is within Devi. Everything is happening within her consciousness. And she's in the center of it. She's chewing on her betel leaf, the fragrance of which is going to all parts of her own consciousness. And from every direction, she is gathering and pulling every object to herself. She is the center of the universe. She's pulling everybody to her, everything to her. You see, if you look at the way the galaxies move, everything is around a center, right? Everything is moving around a center of gravity. She is that center. She is the center of the universe. Whether we are choosing to go in this path of finding her like this, or we are choosing to find her in something else, we are still going to her. Remember what I just told you earlier, that we have our lives, we have according to a social, cultural structure, we live and die according to that. That is also her. If we say, well, I just want to live a satisfactory life, I want to achieve this much, whenever I say I want, what I'm saying is I want her, even if I have no knowledge whatsoever of her. Even if you live in some distant, jungle, never saw civilization, you want something, right? You wake up in the morning, you want something. That want is her. And that want is basically her breath, the fragrance of her breath that is arising from her palm, from her tambulam. Whether I know about Devi or not, whether I'm on a spiritual path or not, whether I'm a blatant materialist or a spiritualist, whether I am a good person or a bad person, whether I am virtuous or not, if I want something, I want her. She is the center of all want. Nothing exists without her. If she is the center of the universe and she's attracting everything from every direction, what can be excluded from it? Anything? Nothing. Now, what happens to you when you think about this? When you think about all of us being pulled into Devi's sphere? And really reflect on this as part of your homework. Whoever you are, she's drawing you in. And if we start to think like this, can you imagine whether you have, these boundaries between me and the other? What will happen to them? They start to dissolve, isn't it? This thing of I am right and you are wrong. You are right and I'm wrong. You did this to me and I did this to you. They did this to us and we did this to them. Does it matter in the end of the day? Because she is the one that is moving this entire creation. And she's pulling everything towards her. She's saying, well, I want to experience myself as that thing that you do to them, or that thing that they did to you. I want to experience myself as that. How about that? I want to see what it feels like to be wronged. I want to experience what it's like to deceive someone. I want to feel what it's like to be in pain. I want to experience what it's like to be cruel. I want that experience because she's the only one that wants through us, through this body-mind. Right? So once we start thinking on this level, what happens to our, our petty or our ordinary ways of thinking and wanting and longing and grabbing and all of that, grasping and pushing away and attractions and aversions. It's the highest form of bhakti yoga, isn't it? There's nothing greater than this in saying she's the one who wants it. She's experiencing this world through me, as me. I just need to align myself with that. Right? So, what a beautiful, beautiful verse that. Nija sallapa madhurya vinirbharsita kachapi. Nija means innate, what is naturally arising. Sallapa means conversation. Okay, to talk. Madhurya is sweet, graceful, charming. Vinirbharta. Vinirbharta means without being threatening. V is without. Nirbharta means threatening. Kachapi is the name of the Veena of Goddess Saraswati. Nija sallapa madhurya vinirbharsita kachapi. Devi's way of speaking is so gracious and non-threatening that it surpasses the sweetness of the Veena of Saraswati. So many of these beings have Veenas, and each one has a name. Narada's Veena has a name, Ravana's Veena has a name, and so on. Saraswati's Veena is known as Kachapi. Okay, so it is said, there's apparently a story that I read somewhere where Saraswati is playing the Veena for Lord Shiva in his praise. And Shiva is listening and enjoying. And then she finishes, or she takes a pause, and Shiva looks at Parvati, or Devi, Lalita, and he says, "What do you think, Devi?" And his eyes just speak, and she says in her voice how beautiful it is. And at once Saraswati realizes her way of speaking is infinitely sweeter than my Veena. So she packs up her Veena and she says, "There is no comparison to your speech, Devi." So Vinirbharsita Kachapi. So there's a nuance here. So it says sallapa. See, remember, the Lalitā Sahasranāma is said to have been composed by the Vak-devatas. So nothing is said, casually. Nija sallapa. They didn't say, well, her speech as such. They said sallapa. Sallapa means a conversation. So Devi's conversation is sweeter. Conversation with who? What did I just tell you in the previous verse? She's the only thing that exists. Who is she conversing with at all times? With herself. She's conversing with Shiva. She's conversing with herself. She's conversing with anyone in the world. Nothing exists other than her, right? Nija is innate. So her innate conversation that she's having is actually with herself. And somehow this verse can become very, it can lead to a lot of spiritual bypass, in my opinion. When you say, well, you have this romantic notion of Devi as this mother who never yells at her children, who, is never fierce, who's always sweet. Is that the case? Have you met Kali, people? Because we'll see later, she is also Mahakali, right? She's also Durga. She's also Chandi. She is all of them. In all of her interactions or her conversations or her sallapa, even when it is fierce, it is non-threatening. Remember that. Even whatever the situation that is going on in your life, however harsh it is Devi having a conversation with herself. She's having a conversation in the form of your karma, in the form of the consequences of your own karma. Can that be harsh? It's always non-threatening, right? Because it's always in response to your own growth. Because ultimately, she wants to experience herself. She wants to grow according to your karma. She wants to see what happens through your karma. She wants to see what that's like, how fun that could be. It's always non-threatening. Non-threatening as in threatening can only exist when there is another, when there is the other. Fear exists when there is the other. Any kind of threat can exist when there is the other. Nija Sallapa. She's always conversing only with herself. She's always interacting only with herself. How can that be threatening? It can't be, because there is no other. Are you understanding this? There's no fear, there is no shame, there is no guilt, there is no regret. She's all that exists. So there is no threat. So it is sweeter than Saraswati's Veena, which is limited in time and space. Devi's speech is eternal. Her dialogue with herself is eternal. She's continuously expressing herself as Para Pashyanti Madhyama Vaikhari in all of us. Non-threatening, because there is no other. Beautiful, isn't it? Nija Sallapa Madhurya Vinir Bhatsita Kachapi. Now, how can we practice with this? Become aware of your speech, of your thoughts, how much there is of the other. How much our speech is directed by me versus the other. And make this, for instance, a mantra. Before you open your mouth and say anything, chant this nama. Nija Sallapa Madhurya Vinir Bhatsita Kachapi. Then open your mouth. See what happens. Use that as a mantra. Each of these is a mantra, by the way. Remember, the Lalitā Sahasranāma is a garland of mantras. So as soon as you start to interact with someone, bring to mind this verse. Nija Sallapa Madhurya. As soon as you start saying it, after a while, it will become implanted in your brain. And then you'll remember the highest teaching. Wait, there is me or the other here. Sometimes your conditioning will be so strong, you'll be like, no problem. I want to be separate from this person right now. I want to be threatening at the moment. I'm angry, I'm frustrated, whatever. Accept it and say, this is how it is at the moment. But we can all aspire to Nija Sallapa Madhurya Vinir Bhatsita Kachapi. Right? Mandasmita Prabhapura Majjat Kamesha Manasa. So the way she speaks, right? What happens to Shiva? Mandasmita Prabhapura. Manda means subtle. Smita is to smile. Prabha is brilliant, like the rising sun. Pura is filling. Majjat, that word means to sink. Kamesha Manasa. So the mind of Kamesha. Kamesha means Shiva. She whose captivating, subtle smile draws the mind of Shiva. So his mind sinks at the sight of her smile. So have you ever been in the position where you remember when you first fell in love? You looked at somebody and your heart sank. Remember that? Your mind stopped and your heart sank. That's what happens to Shiva every time he looks at Devi with her subtle smile. So if you look at all these deities, right, they don't have like, a huge smile, right? They don't smile like with their teeth and They don't have any obvious kind of a smile. They speak through their eyes, remember. So it's a very subtle smile. It's a knowing smile. It's a benevolent smile. And so when he looks at her, his heart sinks. So this again has very esoteric meanings. Shiva is awareness, and Devi is energy. When awareness sinks into energy, it becomes one, right? The energy takes that awareness to the depths of para, or to the heights of para. So the awareness needs to sink into the energy, which again is subtle. Remember, energy is you don't have to have all kinds of energetic symptoms and so on, right? It's a very subtle thing in you. And when this energy sinks into that, that sinks into the ultimate, into para. So Shiva sinking into her is basically energy that absorbs that awareness, and the awareness absorbs the energy, and they become one. Because when we say there is a separation of Shiva and Shakti, it is the separation of awareness and energy. It is the separation of subject and object. Subject and object is the coming together of awareness and energy. Shakti means power, right? Shiva is Prakasha, Shakti is Vimarsha. When the illumination and the reflection come together, one sinks into the other, that leads to the ultimate. And that is the subtle movement that happens as the movement of Kundalini. And that is the experience of Kundalini, right? So again, all of these namas are really descriptions of what happens in the internal plane when you start practicing with the mantra. When you start practicing with a mantra, any mantra that is given to you, but here specifically talking about the Lalita mantras, then that's exactly what happens. The mantra, the energy of the mantra basically absorbs energy, absorbs awareness, and takes it to that state of Parabrahman, or to the state of Samavesha, or the state of Samadhi. That's really what is meant by this. Okay, so we need to always look at what is behind a nama that is applicable to us. So when we practice, having developed this lack of me versus the other, that is when this energy can absorb the awareness. Right? The Shuddha Vidya and all of these different concepts that we have here, I want you to reflect on these from the standpoint of these teachings, of what Shuddha Vidya means, of what Para, Pasyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikari mean, what me versus the other mean, and what it is. What does it mean when you say Devi is the center of the universe, basically attracting everything to her? Not selectively, just you, me, and those of us on this call, and rejecting everybody else. It's not like that, right? She is always attracting all of creation to her. And what does it mean for us in our practice? And when we keep reflecting on that, that awareness becomes established in the energy, which takes us to Samavesha. Making sense? Fantastic. Any questions? We'll stop there today. Any questions or comments?
Kavitha ji, one question. So I'm trying to understand all this like in a conceptual way, but actually I want to apply one thing until we meet again. We operate at the Vaikari level only, like we need that to, that's how we operate in the world. We cannot operate, you and I are the same. I mean, I understand at conceptual level, but how do I make a subtle, I mean, I want to make a subtle improvement in terms of how I interact with people. where I can not just think of this conceptually and force myself to do something and not
Right.
do something.
Mhm.
I want it to come naturally. Like I hope I'm making sense. Am I?
Yes, yes, you're making sense. See,
I just want to do something that will.
yes, and that's why I said one thing to do easily is to think about nija sallapa madhurya vinirbhatsita kachapi before you interact. Before you interact. So you use a nama as a mantra. And you keep that, keep coming back to it. That's why I said sometimes you have to work with one nama for months at a time. There are some namas from the Lalitā Sahasranāma I've been working on for 3 years now. And those are the only namas I'll work with. Because it's like that. One nama will lead you to all the other 999. So if you just, focus on that. So whatever the area of your life is that you want to improve, right? Whatever it is that you want to work on. What is it that you want to work on? You want to work on relationships, say, right? So what is difficult in relationships? The first thing is communication. This is where we kind of get stuck, right? It's like we're not able to convey something, or we're not able to accept what is conveyed to us.
Yeah, stuck in a pattern, and you try to change, it doesn't change. Like you keep doing the same mistake.
Yeah. So, well, there are many important things that need to go into that, including self-inquiry and, what is going on in my internal landscape that prevents me from being clear, right? Is that fear? Is it a fear of being misunderstood? Is it a fear of, what the other person is going to think? Is it a fear of what they'll think about me, which is of my self-image? What is it that prevents clear communication? As an example. Now, if you're stuck in a pattern, it's really important to understand, why are you stuck in that pattern? First of all, what is the pattern? And then why are you stuck in it? Like, what is that pattern that keeps you stuck in it? For instance, if I am manifesting the same kind of results every time in a relationship. So whether it is in this particular relationship or this has been my history, in every relationship, this is what I keep manifesting. A lot of people will sit back and say, well, this is my fate. This is what always happens to me, or whatever, play the victim. But the empowering part here is to take a step back and say, let me surgically dissect this. What is my role in this? Why am I not clear? I'm not clear either because I'm afraid. I'm not clear because I have an expectation of the other person. I have an expectation of myself. I have fear. I have some kind of a guilt. Whatever, you have to figure that out. And then you work from the inside out. And you say, okay, fine. Now that I have recognized this pattern, that every time I am in communication with this person or with anyone, this is how I'm doing this. You bring awareness to it. As soon as you bring awareness to your own pattern, it has nowhere to hide. The reason we keep creating the same kind of patterns in our lives is because we are not aware of them. Once we become aware of them, that is where you can actually start to take a step back. As soon as you see yourself going in that pattern, stop. Just pause. Just pause and say, give me a second. Let me rephrase this. Or you can say, can we talk about this later? Or you can say, I'm not sure that I'm being clear, or we're having a good space right now. Let's both take a step back and talk about this later. As an example in communication. But this is this is what I was talking about, karmas, right? Our karmas keep coming back, and that's why we get stuck in those patterns. Awareness is the key. And later this week, we will actually release videos of point from the Renegade method, and you can those are actually discrete steps in understanding your own pattern. So that might help you as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Pranam, Kavitha ji. My name is Swati.
Hi, sir.
What I was thinking about the Shuddha Vidya and Kurakara as you were speaking, and although I understand when you said Vidya, you said it is actually means the mantra and the 32 level, but what came to my mind, I thought I'll share it with you, and if my understanding will be incorrect, you can correct me. And what I was thinking is that whatever knowledge we actually get, we get it from our 5 senses. That is the actual knowledge that we register. That is why they are called Jnanendriyas as well. And we perceive it ashuddh because of our own sanskaras.
Correct.
So does it mean that as we continue to sincerely purify ourselves, irrespective whether we are on the Sri Vidya path or not, we will reach to that Shuddha Vidya on its own?
Absolutely. That is the whole purport of this, right? Is all of the malas are in us. The impurities are in us, right? Life is going on as it is. There's nothing right, wrong, good, bad, anything. There are no dualities in life as it is going on. We project our dualistic kinds of opinions and projections onto whatever is going on as this should have happened, that shouldn't have happened, this is good, that is bad, and so on and so forth. And those all come from our own sanskaras. And those are the sanskaras we need to purify. So if you take the Lalitā Sahasranāma course, there we talk about this quite a bit, which is the clarification of the buddhi is really what this path is all about. And that clarification of the buddhi does not happen simply by chanting this or, reading or things like that. It needs to happen with all of it put together, bhakti, devotion to the path, devotion to wanting to do this work, self-inquiry and awareness and all of it. So it's like a holistic path that needs to percolate into every area of our life. If you keep the spiritual path separate from your life, very little can happen, really. If you meditate and then go about your life and you forgot any insights from meditation, it's useless, right? And then you have to keep going back. This is why there are people who say, well, I have to meditate. If I don't meditate, then I'm a different person. You shouldn't be. The insights of your meditation, the insights of your study and your inquiry, those need to percolate into your life. And you have to continuously apply that in your life as you're living it. That is the only way things can change. Otherwise,
thank you so much.
They remain just the way they are. So very, very good summary. Thank you. Why is it so difficult for us to know ourselves as the universal and not personal? Almost no one knows it. That's not true. Lots of people know it. So it's because it's a possibility that these teachings are given to us. And why? Because of these sanskaras, as we discussed. So that's what we need to do. So some other question?
Yeah, I have not related to today's class. I actually listened to Living Shakti on Audible quite a bit. I actually was looking forward to your other books. I don't see any of your other books in Audible. Do you have plans of bringing it on Audible? I was thinking it might come, but that's my preferred format of reading these days. So
the plans are there.
Okay.
We'll see about the time. and the time frame that might come into manifestation. The plan is always there.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
I better buy it if I want to.
Yes. Any other questions? So we'll meet again on September 10th. So keep working on these namas, and we have the resplendent rhythm of our 6-month or 5-month immersion into the Nitya Devis starting on September 9th. So if you are interested, you have 10 days to sign up for that. And Tanu, maybe you can share the link for that. And yeah, that is a deep dive into the Nitya Devis, which we just discussed, the moon cycles, the Kali and the Lalita Nityas, and really through self-enquiry, through all of the different techniques we have been talking about here, self-enquiry, integration, and intense. So 10 days to apply, and then I'll see everybody else on September 10th. So take it easy, everyone. Srimate Namaha.
Thank you.